Hi, this is Kim, and I am here today to talk about an interview that I listened to recently from the EQOF website. It was called Self-Neglect, and it's part of the Atlanteans series. The interview was really cool in that I enjoyed the approach that it took towards the experience of neglect, because people often will react to thinking or believing or perceiving that they are some way or somehow being neglected by others in their world. And the approach that this interview took was to first and foremost, before even going into that whole point of how others are neglecting you, to look at yourself and your own world and relationships, interactions, and see where you are in fact neglecting either others or things in your world that you're responsible for or that you interact with, or it could be your home environment, cooking, cleaning. It could be people in your world who you haven't reached out to in a really long time. You know, your grandparents, parents, friends, and aunt, that you just kind of every time it pops up in your head, oh, I should give some so and so a phone call, and then immediately you put it aside and busy yourself, occupy yourself with something else. Or, if you're doing something like, I don't know, laundry or dishes, and you just kind of rush through it, that is, in fact, being neglectful towards something. Um, and, or your pets or your children. You're busy and you just fall into the habit of not paying that attention or giving that time that they may need or want. And so that when you look at these things that you yourself are doing and how you yourself are living neglect, that you see that when this happens unto you, when you're on the receiving end of this, not to take it personally. Because if you really investigate and look at yourself and see how you yourself, as the neglectful one, live this, you'll see that it's not at all personal. It's not even about the thing that you're being neglectful towards. You're not calling these people in your world because you don't care for them. It's just this neglectful energy you fall into where it becomes um, second nature to not act when it first comes into your mind to, reach out, give a phone call, or invest the time or attention, but instead to just go along with your day and your busy schedule and whatnot. So um, when I watched the interview, this struck me because I hadn't previously defined these things as neglectful. I just I didn't even really look at them. I knew as soon as I heard the interview talk about it that this is what I was doing. It struck me as the truth, and then you have this guilt and everything. Um, so the interview was suggesting to actually, when these ideas pop up in your mind, to, if possible, act on them, make the phone call, reach out, spend the extra time, invest the energy. Make sure that you're present and aware and not lost in your mind of thoughts, thinking about what you need to do next, or, um, you know, busying yourself with preoccupations in your mind, and instead, uh, being present and being there. So it was interesting because the very day that I watched the interview, it did pop into my mind to call a specific individual that I know had been through a hard time and is now alone, and had expressed in the past that they would like to hear from me from time to time, and I hadn't reached out to them in a really long time. Um, and then, once a lot of time passes, you start to justify, well, it's been so long now, if I do it now, it's going to be weird, I feel bad. And so then instead of just following those thoughts, I thought back to the interview and I picked up the phone and I made the phone call. Um, and I also, in the days following, the interview noticed all the times when someone would reach out to me and I wouldn't respond immediately. I know sometimes it's not possible to respond immediately, but I would put it off and then maybe forget about it, and days would pass, and I can see how if I were on the receiving end of that, I might take it personally and think, oh, the person, doesn't consider me, or whatever, because they don't respond to me for days. So I'm kind of in a way guilty of the same thing. So I need to check myself first before I can judge, anything. And the interview also suggested that instead of, existing within this spite and just waiting for people to come to you, you can actually step up and be an example and be the one to reach out, regardless of, what's going on the other end, to have your actions be unconditional, not expect anything in return specifically, but to, when and as you think of it and when and as possible, to take that time and make that investment. On a side note, I am walking a process with OCD in my life, and this video was supportive and assisted me a lot in terms of the isolation that sometimes comes along or is created within this disorder, because I have noticed that with the disorder, sometimes I don't want to face people or the world, or it's just easier to be alone and to be isolated. And I've seen also in documentaries where people are suffering from the same thing as me, that they have the tendency to kind of your world just shrinks down. So the interview assisted me a lot with that as well, in terms of not all of a sudden becoming an extremely, incredibly social person, but to have to invite people into my life, and when people do reach out to me, to respond, to be responsive and to let them know, yeah, I'm here, and I hear you, and respond to them, as soon as I think of it, instead of putting it off or making an excuse or procrastinating. So it kind of opens up your world too and diminishes that isolation. In fact, can erase it altogether, so long as you keep it up. So yeah, that's my review on this interview, and that is how it assisted and supported me in my life in general, and specifically regarding my process with OCD. Thank you.